Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling something pretty big. Feels a bit like science fiction, honestly, but it has some very real-world implications for tech. Artificial General Intelligence, AGI.
Right. We're not just talking about the AI we use now, like chatbots or image generators.
No, exactly. This is the hypothetical next level, or maybe the ultimate level. An intelligence that could, surpass human intellect completely. Maybe even exist without needing us at all.
It's a massive concept. And there's a huge debate about whether it's even possible. Or if it is it coming soon or is it way, way off?
Absolutely. And it's not just philosophers kicking this around, is it?
Yeah.
The whole AGI discussion is, well, it's tied up with billions in investment going into current AI.
That's a key point. If AGI isn't really achievable, or at least not for a very long time, then what does that mean for all this money pouring into large language models, for instance?
Are we building towards this superintelligence, or are we just making, fancier tools?
Yeah, fancier and fancier tools.
Yeah. So that's what we wanted to dive into today. We found this really interesting YouTube discussion, Mookie Tenenbaum and Claudio Suchavicki on the Quovo channel. They look at AGI, but kind of through a financial and business lens.
Yeah, looking at the fears, the hype, and maybe the economic drivers behind it all.
So our goal is to unpack that, understand AGI a bit better, the anxieties around it, and crucially, the sort of business side of the conversation.
And we should definitely echo the disclaimer they gave. This is all just for information, for education. Nothing we talk about or they talked about is financial advice or legal advice or investment advice. Always, do your own homework.
Absolutely. Consult the pros. Okay, so the source starts with this definition of AGI. Pretty wild. A superintelligence knowing more than all humans combined. Potentially conscious. Self-aware. And maybe doesn't need us.
Yeah, when you put it like that, the doomsday stuff isn't far behind, is it?
Not at all. And the source, it points out there are basically three camps on whether this is even possible.
Right. You've got the people who say, nope, impossible, never going to happen.
Then the flip side, the ones who think it's like right around the corner.
Yeah.
Imminent.
And the third group, sort of in the middle, they see it as possible, but maybe a long way down the road, not something for us to worry about tomorrow.
So this idea of an AGI not needing us,
yeah.
That's where you get the, the Terminator vibe, the Matrix fear, humanity becoming, irrelevant or worse.
Yeah, the source definitely touches on that fear. That AGI might just decide we're unnecessary baggage.
But there's a crucial counterpoint they raise, right, about consciousness.
Exactly. I mean, a rock doesn't need us. The planet doesn't need us. But they aren't conscious. They don't have desires or intentions.
And current AI, even the really impressive stuff, it doesn't have that either. It's just a tool.
A very, very sophisticated tool. They used phrases like talking screwdriver or sophisticated parrot, which I thought were quite good.
Yeah, captures it well. Super useful for specific things.
Yeah.
Bringing amazing efficiency gains, like the example of AI potentially spotting breast cancer better than human experts. That's... Wow.
It really is. The efficiency isn't in doubt. But that leap to AGI, it seems to hang entirely on this slippery idea of consciousness.
And specifically the self-preservation instinct that usually comes with consciousness. Yeah. That seems to be the missing piece.
Right. So if, and it's a huge if, AGI did become conscious, then what?
Then the source suggests it might develop its own interests, and those interests might not line up with ours. That seems to be the core of the anxiety. Right. Not just smarts, but its own goals.
An independent agenda. And they draw this interesting contrast between human emotions, often immediate, maybe irrational.
Blind, even.
Yeah, versus AI's current focus on logic, reason, looking ahead, which raises a really deep question. Could AI get consciousness without feelings?
And if it did, would we treat it differently? Like, would we hesitate to switch it off if it wasn't, feeling anything in a way we recognize?
It's a philosophical minefield. But it connects to this other really provocative idea from the discussion.
The idea that the fear itself is a business.
Exactly. That the whole AGI panic is being, maybe manufactured or at least amplified as a business model.
Okay, unpack that. How does that work?
Well, the logic is,
yeah,
if you can convince people AGI is a possible, maybe even likely threat, then you create a need for protection, for defense mechanisms.
Like the analogy they used selling fire extinguishers by convincing people their concrete house might burn down.
Precisely. Create the fear, sell the solution. It's not a new tactic in business, is it?
No. And they mentioned the RAND Corporation testifying to the U.S. Congress about AGI dangers. You could see how that might play into demands for, well, funding,
Yeah.
for research, for defense.
Right. It builds the narrative. The antivirus software analogy also fits pretty well. First, you need the virus or the threat of the virus to sell the antivirus.
So the threat of AGI, real or not, creates a market for ways to control or counter it.
That seems to be the argument.
Yeah.
And it's probably worth remembering that statistic they mentioned, too.
Oh, yeah, the 75% one.
Uh-huh. That roughly 75% of scientists worldwide don't actually think AGI is happening anytime soon. There's a lot of skepticism out there.
That definitely puts the more alarmist takes into perspective.
It does. And they also touched on how some big names, like Elon Musk, his tune seems to have changed a bit before and after he had his own AI company, Grok.
And Yuval Noah Harari, too, right? Known for writing about big existential risks. Their stances might evolve.
Yeah, and you can't help but wonder, what's driving that? Is it pure intellectual evolution, or are there other factors? Selling books, promoting tech? It gets complicated.
While everyone's focused on this maybe distant AGI threat, does that mean we're ignoring the dangers of the AI we already have?
That's a really important point they raise. Things like deepfakes, scams, misinformation. Those are happening now with current AI.
Right, we don't need Skynet to cause problems.
Exactly. And they mention a Harvard study finding people are using AI more as a companion, a friend, rather than just for work or study.
Wow, really? That's interesting. And maybe a bit concerning.
Well, yeah. What does that do to actual human relationships? That give and take, the messy parts. If you can just get easy validation from an AI, does that affect how we interact with each other?
It could potentially erode some social skills, or maybe just change social dynamics in ways we don't expect. Lots to think about there.
Definitely. So, okay, let's pivot back to the money side. The discussion laid out how your belief about AGI hitting soon or not really changes your investment thinking.
Yeah, it seems pretty logical, actually. If you think AGI is coming, and soon,
then you probably want to bet on the big players trying to build it, right? The Googles, OpenAIs, Metas, now Grok. Because whoever gets there first,
yeah,
well, the value would be astronomical.
Unimaginable, probably. But if you're skeptical, if you think AGI is hype, or at least very far off,
then maybe you focus elsewhere. On AI for specific industries, military uses perhaps, or maybe more cleverly, the companies building the underlying stuff.
The picks and shovels.
Exactly. The NVIDIAs, the TSMCs, ASML, the companies making the chips and the machines that make the chips. Because they benefit from more AI development, whether or not it ever reaches general intelligence, they just need more powerful processors.
They're kind of agnostic on the whole AGI outcome. In a business sense, more AI means more demand for their hardware.
Pretty much. And the discussion also noted the recent turbulence in the tech market, a reminder that this whole space is incredibly volatile. Any calm might just be temporary.
Yeah, good point. And they even linked it to bigger economic things like potential trade policies, mentioning Trump, and how that could ripple through global markets and affect AI development, especially outside China.
It's all connected. Tech, finance, politics.
Okay, so beyond the markets. AGI can just fundamentally change how we even use technology, couldn't it? They contrasted it with current AI limitations.
Yeah, like the hallucinations. How current AI often just makes stuff up because it's basically programmed to always give an answer.
Right, it can't easily say, I don't know, or that's a stupid question.
But a truly conscious AGI, it might operate totally differently. It might refuse to answer. It might have its own priorities that trump whatever you asked it.
That completely changes the dynamic. From tool user to something else entirely. Negotiator. Petitioner.
Who knows? And then there's the idea of a self-programming AGI, one that could potentially create its own companies, design its own robots, build its own, digital worlds.
That's properly disruptive. Markets wouldn't just be changed. They could be completely rewritten in ways we can't even predict.
And the societal impact. They touched on that too. What does it do to human relationships, family structures, maybe even human evolution itself?
The idea of humanity being diluted in a world full of potentially billions of these superintelligences, that's pretty mind-bending stuff.
It really is. And it just highlights how difficult, maybe impossible it is to actually prepare for something like AGI. How can you plan for a consciousness that might be utterly alien to ours?
Yeah, we can barely understand each other's consciousness sometimes, let alone a completely different kind.
Exactly. It's a profound challenge.
So, pulling it back to the present, the discussion made an interesting comparison, likening the AGI hype and debate to climate change.
Yeah, suggesting both are these huge, future-focused topics that attract massive attention, but also have significant underlying economic interest driving the conversation.
Which makes sense. Whether AGI happens or not, people are definitely going to make and lose a lot of money betting on it, investing in it, developing related tech.
Absolutely. And that virus and antivirus analogy seems relevant again here. Maybe the threat of AGI gets played up to create the market for the cure or the containment.
Right. Amplify the potential problem to sell the solution.
But, there might be an upside to all this focus, even if AGI itself is science fiction for now.
How so?
Well, all this thinking about the dangers of a superintelligence could actually spur innovation in making current AI safer and more controllable, addressing the risks we already face.
That's a good point. The conversation itself might push us towards better AI safety practices, regardless of the ultimate outcome.
Maybe. They also briefly mentioned a more immediate and, frankly, plausible concern. Not full AGI, but just very advanced AI falling into the wrong hands, malicious actors.
Yeah, using powerful AI for nefarious purposes. They drew a parallel to existing threats like biological warfare. You don't need a sentient AI to cause catastrophic harm if the tool is powerful enough.
Precisely. So at the end of the day, the source seemed pretty convinced that AGI, as popularly imagined, isn't happening right now, probably not soon.
But
the fear around it, that's real. And it will have economic consequences, financial impacts. So understanding the motivations, the narratives, the businesses being built on that fear, that's crucial.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. Our deep dive today, we've looked at what AGI is supposed to be, this spectrum of beliefs about whether it's even possible.
We dug into the fears, losing control, becoming obsolete, the whole existential threat angle.
And critically, we explored this argument that the fear itself is being perhaps leveraged, used as a business driver, creating markets for solutions.
Yeah, understanding those financial gears turning behind the AGI headlines seems really important for getting a clearer picture. It's not just science fiction, it's also about market dynamics.
Right, which leads us to maybe a final thought for you, the listener. True AGI might be uncertain, maybe decades away, maybe never, but the conversation about it is definitely shaping things right now. Investments, research, how we think about AI's future.
So maybe the question is, while we're all looking way ahead at this potential superintelligence, what parts of the AI landscape today, the real tools, the real impacts, the real risks, aren't getting the critical attention they deserve because we're so focused on the potential robot overlords? What should we be thinking more about right now?